Good morning, boys and girls. It is Mr. Beasley, and I will be introducing Families of the Orchestra. Learning target. I am learning to determine which family an instrument belongs to. Success criteria. I know I've got it when I can compare and contrast woodwind and brass instruments. Essential question. Why and how are instruments categorized into families? Important vocabulary: woodwind family, brass family, string family, percussion family, orchestra. Before we get started, watch this video of an orchestra playing. Try to figure out if you can recognize this song. Have you seen an orchestra before? What do you notice about the orchestra in the video? What questions do you have? For instance, how many people are in each section? What are the names of the instruments in each section? Who leads the orchestra? What is an orchestra? An orchestra is a group of instrumentalists playing classical music primarily together. Now, orchestras began a long time ago, boys and girls. So they would play classical music because that was the music of the time. Nowadays, they can play more modern things like we saw in Aladdin on the last slide. And they are categorized into four different families. And they are led by the conductor in the red. You see the red down there at the bottom of the screen on the right. There is the woodwind family in the orange, the clarinets, the piccolos and flutes, bassoons and double bassoons, and the oboes. The brass family in the green with the horns, the trumpets, the trombones, and the tuba. You have the string family in the yellow with the first violins, second violins, violas, cellos, double bass, and harp. And in the blue, all the way in the back of the orchestra, is the percussion. Instruments are placed into families based on how they make their sounds. So, do you just blow through the instrument? Is there something being hit? Is there a reed that vibrates to make the sound? How they are constructed or put together? So, are they long? Are they short? How many keys do they have? Things like that. Are they metal? Are they wood? That's the materials that are used. So, they are placed into families based on those three different criteria. Woodwind family. The woodwind family used to be made of, guess what? All wood. But over time, they created new instruments and they wanted to make different sounds. So they now may be made of wood, metal, or plastic. There are cylinders with an opening at the bottom, a mouthpiece at the top, and that's where you put your mouth. And the holes you can cover with your fingers, also called the keys, and are usually covered with metal. To play a woodwind, you blow air through the mouthpiece, and to change the note, you cover the keys with your fingers. So the clarinet has something that is called a reed, which is used to make sound. The reed vibrates when the player blows air through the mouthpiece. So that's how it gets its sound. So the saxophone and the clarinet and the oboe and the bassoon all need reeds to produce their sound. The flute is the one exception to this rule. It does not need a reed to be played. You just blow into it and press down the keys and it makes sounds. The bassoon and the oboe actually have something that's really cool. It's called a double reed, which we will demonstrate in the video on the next slide. Have you seen any of these instruments before? You may have seen someone as you walk down the street playing a saxophone, or maybe you saw in a movie someone was playing a flute, or a clarinet, or an oboe, or a bassoon. Can you think of a time when you've seen one of these instruments, or maybe heard one of these instruments? Watch these videos to learn more about woodwind instruments. So, these are a couple of my colleagues and friends that sent in these videos about the saxophone, the oboe, the bassoon, and the flute. So make sure you go through and watch each one of these videos and hear about the different instruments and how they sound. And maybe after you hear how they sound, you can think about a time when you've maybe heard something that sounds like that. Maybe in a movie or maybe just somewhere that you just haven't even thought of yet. So listen to the different instruments and see if you can relate it to your life. Brass family. Brass instruments are made of brass and are usually the loudest in the orchestra. Brass instruments make their sounds buzzing their lips against a metal cup shaped mouthpiece. Buzzing their lips makes the air vibrate inside the horn. This makes the sound. So our brass instruments are trumpet, French horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba. Can you buzz your lips and sound like a bee? Mr. Beasley will demonstrate first. So that's what all brass players have to do to make sound. And some of them have really big mouthpieces like the tuba, and some have really small mouthpieces like the trumpet or the French horn. But they still have to buzz their lips, which blows air into the instrument and makes the sounds. They also use their fingers to change notes like woodwinds, but like the air that we were talking about a minute ago, they can put more air into it or they can move the way that their lips are and it can change the note. So they could only be pressing one key down and they could change to three different notes just by changing the amount of air and the way that their lips are placed. Isn't that pretty cool? Most people, most use the keys, but the one instrument that does not have to use keys is the trombone. Look at the trombone all the way over to the right. It has a slide, and when it slides, it makes different sounds, and it also uses its lips to buzz and make different notes. Here is three videos about the brass family. We have the euphonium, the French horn, and the trombone. So watch these instruments to learn more about these brass instruments and just to hear how they sound and see if you've maybe heard one of them before. Maybe you've heard the French horn if you have watched a Star Wars movie. Maybe you've heard a trombone from the Trombone Guy video. Maybe you've heard a euphonium if you've ever been to a football game. Show what you know. Learning target. I am learning to determine which family an instrument belongs to. I know I've got it when I can compare and contrast woodwind and brass instruments. Use this flip grid to tell me how woodwind instruments and brass instruments are the same and different. I look forward to hearing your different answers to this question.